Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this latest Business Gateway webinar. I'm delighted to be joined today by Vicky Brock. Vicky, good afternoon, welcome.
Hello.
We will give folks a few moments to join us because it's always a little bit of a struggle sometimes to get through the system. And while we're doing that, I'll give folks a wee bit of an overview and do some of the housekeeping, as we always do. So just to let everyone know, the session is being recorded and will be made available afterwards. Everyone has been placed on mute, obviously, to avoid any background noise. You can submit questions via the portal, please do, and we will try and get to them. Although we have a good session of questions for Vicky, I'm going to put her on the spot. And also just to let you know that if there's anything that we haven't covered during the discussion or picked up in the questions, that you're interested in more about, there will be a follow-up and they can contact Business Gateway directly. So you can contact us directly later on, okay? So why are we here this afternoon? Well, we have this webinar, Tackling Failure and Building Confidence in Business, because confidence, belief in yourself is something that affects us as people. But it certainly affects us as business people as well. And that fear of failure can be a challenge for folks. So in the wake of COVID, the energy crisis, the ongoing cost of living crisis, there's never been a time where there's been more pressure on businesses, and they have to work even harder to generate custom. And for small businesses, particularly with limited numbers of employees or potentially none at all, the challenge is even greater because small business owners can often find themselves playing the role of business leader, as well as wearing all the other hats that you need to wear, which might be sales director, finance director, HR director. So it's unsurprising that that fear of failure is there because of that pressure that's on people. So we want to help to eradicate, tackle some of that issue of belief. We want to help build a bit of confidence among Scottish business owners. So we have invited Vicky, who is described as a serial entrepreneur. Vicky, can you tell us a wee bit more about yourself and give us a wee bit of your background?
Yeah, so I find myself now a serial entrepreneur, which is not like the cereal of the corn type, but the serial offender type, which means, I guess, means I'm just compulsive. I can't stop it, even though perhaps I should. I'm now on my 5th startup, and yeah, I don't come from a family that has got any connection to business. It took me a long time to realize that the compulsion I had to invent things, build things, solve problems myself, get really annoyed when other people try to tell me what to do and why I should do it when I just frankly disagree, was a wonderful skill set if I could deploy it in the right way. You know, that turned out to be deploying that as starting my own companies. The very first one I did was me and my husband. I have to say it was the hardest one of all. The two of us in the Highlands doing, you know, working together, no opportunity to take any time off, you know, not the extra cash that we could bring another person in. It was the most intense and the hardest of all. You know, I've done the other extreme where I raised money, built a big business, got lots of shiny awards, had very big highs, had even bigger lows, and learned very different lessons. So yeah, I think being a serial entrepreneur means that you just don't take no for an answer. Despite all of the insanity, you get up and do it again and try to not make the same mistakes twice. Make new mistakes every time.
And you learn from them. That's the important bit. I mean, it sounds as if you've had a very busy, very successful career. What would you say has been your biggest achievement to date?
Well, you know, without wanting to sound too much like Elton John, you know, I'm still standing after all this time. I think, you know, my biggest achievement is probably that I came back from my biggest failure. it came very close to breaking me at a personal level.
Yeah.
Physically, emotionally, financially, it was the most intense and painful experience. And so I kind of regard the fact that I come back once I was ready, and it took longer than I thought it would, but I came back with a big smile on my face, re-energized with, I would say, a very different outlook on life and the role of me as a business person and the role of me as a human being much more clearly understood. And that I got up and I did it all over again. I did it with two wonderful co-founders, and we, on day one, knew the values of what we wanted to do. We knew why we were doing it, and we knew who we wanted to be. And so it's meant that this latest company, I'm now, I think, 4 years in, has been a wonderful antidote to that previous experience where I think I lost myself and I lost everything I believed in. This time I kind of come back and have proven to myself. I mean, I thought I was proving it to the world, but I wasn't. In retrospect, the only person I was proving this to was myself. And so I feel a sense of personal achievement that we've done it on our terms and it's fun.
Good. Just thinking a wee bit more about that, you'd had that really difficult situation. What helped you to come back from that? What help did you get to come back from that?
I think, I mean, to kind of put it into a little bit of context for maybe I always feel like everybody knows about this, because you always feel like your dirty linen got washed in public, but that's not necessarily true. I worked very, very, very hard, as founders in a startup do. I worked very, very, very hard for 5 years, 7 days a week, 18 hours a day, non-stop. And I would say probably the last year of that, I didn't feel I did anything right. Everything felt like it went backwards, nothing felt like it was working. It didn't matter how hard I worked. I didn't achieve what I felt I achieved before, and I just got more and more burnt out and less and less able to deal with the many challenges, some which are easy to anticipate, some which are really not, that just increasingly bubbled up to the surface. And I think I was close to broken, and various conflicts came to a head, and I walked away from my own company. And I had kind of an enforced wander through the wilderness. I mean, I had a non-compete agreement. I had literally legal agreements that said I couldn't go work with the same people and do, another startup for a fixed period of time. And those legal agreements were useful. I wasn't capable of it anyway, but in my head, it meant like I now have to go wander through the desert for 6 months and kind of atone for my various failings. But that was really good. It was headspace. And it's kind of one of those things that I hope we'll get the chance to come back to, is building that headspace where you can, building that time to get outside, if that's your thing, get into the air, look at plants, wander through your literal or metaphysical garden, and kind of go back to ground level and come back up. I did that. I kept in touch to some degree with the entrepreneurial and the startup world, because I was terrified I'd been as good as I was ever going to be, and I just was never going to do this again, be able to do this again, that nobody would want me to. I wouldn't be able to do it. And so, but I also felt like I've learned a lot, and I want to share that. So I did stuff like I started a blog, a podcast. I started to try to build the Scotland Women's Olympic team of startup founders informally, which is great. And that was good. And it meant finally, when I was ready, I'd worked through myself a lot of the unpicking of what worked and what didn't work, and time had gone by.
Okay. What got you into entrepreneurship in the first place, and what were you doing before you did that?
So I think I was like born as in a little test tube as an entrepreneur. I just didn't realize it. So when I did English at university, because despite the fact that I could computer program, my dad was a factory engineer, I didn't believe I was any good at computing, and I wasn't confident in my maths and all of those kind of usual things when you come from a comprehensive and you've not kind of got those connections into the world. So I did English at university, but even then I was an entrepreneur in that there was a little computer room in the basement, and I charged all my fellow students to have their essays nicely typed up on the computer. I didn't have to pay for anything. Like, there was a free printer, there was free computer room. It was probably the most still today, it was probably the most profitable business I ever had. It was like pure profit margin. And that was my beer money, through university. I think if I'd come from a different background, that would have probably fast-tracked me to, my first Series A funding or something. But I didn't appreciate quiet for a long time. That was my spirit. It was when I actually moved to the Highlands back in 2001, I think, where I kind of became an entrepreneur out of necessity, because there wasn't the kind of job that I'd done before. So I thought, hey, I'll start my own company, as many people do. And that was hard. And when I did my next company, it was like, this time I'm going to build a product. I'm going to build something that I can sell over and over again. I'm going to build software, because I kind of had gotten to know all these, shiny, enticing Americans who all seemed to be selling their startups left, right, and center for lots of money. So I was like, yeah, I can do that. How hard can it be? So yeah, and honestly, not that hard, it turns out, at least by some criteria of success.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. I mean, you've really described in many ways there that it's not clearly all plain sailing in business. And that's why today we're talking about that fear of failure, that confidence, that belief thing. You, I think, again, highlighted that not always things go to plan. Clearly something was really not going to plan there. Now, you mentioned, though, that as part of, I guess, that recuperation, that recovery, you had the blog that you were doing. What engagement did you get from people? Did you get lots of engagement from folk? Is there a big issue out there with folks, you feel, about that confidence, that belief, that fear of failure?
I think that I tapped into a vein of fear and anxiety and frankly horrible experiences that people were having. And I think it was because, I had nothing to lose. I felt like I had lost everything. I mean, it was only because, some of my former clients bunged me a few contracts of work. I didn't literally lose everything. But I felt like I had nothing to lose and everything to gain by talking about my own experiences. I felt like, my narrative and how I choose to react to this is literally the only thing I can control.
Yeah.
And so, boy, if this is the only thing I can control, damn, I'm going to do it. And I started to blog about my own experiences, and then people started to write to me, and they would either share like a horrible situation they were having or a challenge they were having, or they would say, look, I can't write about this, but this is what's going on. Perhaps, you could pick it up. And so I started to take requests from other founders. And then I realized that actually there were some really common themes coming through. The amazing, the physical, mental, emotional toll being a leader, being a business owner, being a founder takes one big stream. The infinite number of ways people seem to get I was about to swear, shafted by their investors, boards, etc. Like every time you think you've seen it all, you hear another. That was a big pillar. And then there was just, you know, all sorts of human conflict, team staff, people being swindled, you know, all sorts of stuff going on. And then there was just I think perhaps the most human thing of all, I'm exhausted. I've given this my best shot and I'm tired and I don't want to go on. And I've never hidden the fact that I think the try again, I think that's really bad advice. I think, you know what, sometimes you have to know when to walk away.
Yeah.
Don't look at it as a single game and a single business. Look at it as a lifetime's worth. It's okay to walk away from one. Conserve something, you know, conserve your energy, your optimism, your hope and belief in humanity, and come back and do it again. Don't keep running into the wall because you think you can't stop. And I think by saying that, I got approached by quite a lot of people who wanted permission to stop. And I think that was perhaps one of the things I was best able to give. And then I started doing the podcast as an agony aunt to entrepreneurs. Sadly, I don't have time to do it now. This was very much between businesses. Now I'm the CEO of 2 companies simultaneously, and I don't sadly have time to do that. But that was great fun. People literally wrote to me with a problem. I found a problem, an entrepreneur problem, and then I got a well-qualified guest and we sat and talked it through. And so, yeah, it doesn't go away. It's an incredibly lonely place. It's an incredibly lonely place to be a founder, to be a business leader. It's a bit like being prime minister. It's so rare you end on a high, you know.
Yeah, well, let's not go there. Well, I feel I'm following really in your shoes there, because I have a very well qualified guest here talking about these issues of fear of failure and confidence. We've got a question from someone. What do you think are the most important traits of an entrepreneur?
So I think that, why don't I start with the things I think are overrated? Because a lot of the characteristics people think of as the archetypal entrepreneur, and probably what I fall into a little bit, I think might be overrated. You know, I think the ideas person, I mean, I'm like 101 ideas before breakfast, and actually a lot of them are really rather good if I could, you know, make it through my breakfast to do something about them. I think the idea that to be a good entrepreneur you have to be an ideas person is a myth. You need an ideas person somewhere in the mix at the beginning. But if there's too many ideas people in your team, I mean, perhaps actually that's the point, that the ideal entrepreneur is in fact not one person, it's a co-founding team. And this business, you know, there's 3 of us. Two of them live on the ground and hold me down, and I live on the ceiling, and we make a good kind of like little trio because of that. I think though it's something where if you're successful, or if you are prominent, the 2 things don't necessarily mean the same thing. If you're out doing your job, you're putting your head above the parapet every day, and you are getting, you know, things, rotten tomatoes thrown at you all of the time. And I think you have to have your own personal strategies, whatever they are, for managing that. I don't think you can depersonalize it. I think it's another one of those annoying myths when people say, oh, you shouldn't take it so personally. It's like, literally, on the one hand, investors say, well, we invest in the founder. Everybody says it's about the founder. It's about the entrepreneur. You stand up and you're responsible and you're accountable and you're the face of it, but then you shouldn't take it personally. You know, there's quite a lot of conflict there, but I think you need those coping strategies to have, you know, I need my business CEO founder persona who is like a lot more got it together than perhaps me sitting around in my pajamas at 4 a.m. this morning because I got a really important deadline wrong, and so I had to work all night, to pull it off.
So would you say resilience is an important trait to have then?
I think resilience is a trait we develop. And I think that if you can develop resilience through your life, then it will suit you extraordinarily well as a founder, as an entrepreneur. I think if you don't have it on day one, that shouldn't stop you. But I can tell you, if you pitch for 2 years and you have like 200 people tell you no and why your idea is stupid, and every day you get contradictory, you must be more this and less this, and why aren't you them, or why are you being like them? Like every single day, everything you're told is contradictory, and other people's opinion. If you don't develop resilience during that process, there are easier ways to make money if you don't like that.
Okay.
Much easier ways to make money.
So thinking about the blog, the Agony Aunt, the podcast kind of bit where you were getting all these issues that folk had that were coming out the woodwork, what would you say on the back of that were the biggest causes of failure in business?
Well, I think the causes of stress and the causes of failure, if we want to call that, are kind of aligned. I think a lot of what we casually talk about as failure is just, not having had a great day. Most of my failure I can look at and frame as practice. Well, all of this stuff wrong. I won't do that next time. So that's really not failure, right? That's just practice.
Yeah.
But the big things, proper failure, failure is, we fear failure rightly because proper horrible failure comes at a cost, like a personal cost, a physical cost, an emotional cost, a financial cost, sometimes at a legal cost, certainly at a reputational cost. So that true type of failure, as opposed to a stupid little mistake, which on your deathbed, you will not remember. That's not failure. If you can't remember it on your deathbed, it doesn't count, in my opinion. We can take a lot of stuff out, right? But true existential stress and the failure that goes with that, or the catastrophic outcomes that go with that, I think come down to money, people being exposed to poor behavior or culture, and unfortunately chance, circumstance, stroke bad luck. I think over the last few years we've had a lot of that hard to predict accurately chance, misfortune, bad luck. And some people I know have got wonderful, wonderful businesses who've done everything right, who I admire absolutely, have lost those businesses because they were in the wrong sector at the wrong time with, COVID or Brexit or, all of the other things. But the, money, people, conflict, and poor behavior, I think are the things that I've seen over and over again.
Okay. No, that's really, really helpful. Colleagues in Entrepreneurial Scotland talk about an issue of, as I've said, confidence, the belief that business owners, entrepreneurs have, and that aspect of fear of failure as well. Do you think that a fear of failure hinders entrepreneurialism? If we're too worried about what might go wrong? And if that's the case, how do we change that mindset?
things will always go wrong. I mean, I'm a little bit suspicious when things go to plan. I worry about the ambition of my plan, or I worry that something really bad is going to happen, because what are the chances that all of these things go correctly in the right order? So, I mean, I guess, again, I think it's that separation of what is failure really. And I think there's stuff that's risk, there's stuff that you haven't predicted, there's stuff that goes wrong. And that is an absolute certainty. And those are things that you every single day as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, or as a manager, every single day you should be dealing with circumstances, with decision after decision after decision. Nothing gets better by procrastination. Nothing gets better by not facing it. So things that are risky, things that are unpleasant, things that make you feel a bit sick in your stomach, that's not necessarily the road to failure, as long as you're constantly dealing with them. I mean, I kind of am very segmenty, I'm like, okay, the higher the pressure, the more I go, okay, right, is this something that has to be in my red zone, which is like stuff I have to make decisions on and do in order for everything and anything else to happen? Or is this like green zone stuff that, frankly, it doesn't matter if I don't deal with it tomorrow. In fact, it probably doesn't matter if I forget and never do. Like, somebody really cares, they'll, keep chasing me. It may become urgent, but it's not urgent now. And frankly, there's 3 decisions and 3 actions I have to take today in order to get to tomorrow. Yeah. If they ain't on the list, or they're not like red zone things, they go away. Sometimes, that's when I'm at my most pressured and I've got the least amount of brain space. I'm literally, think of it in binary terms: do, not do.
Yeah.
When I'm not at that level of capacity, I tend to be a little bit more nuanced in terms of, is this something I can control? Is this something I need to influence? Is this something I need to monitor? Is this something that I just have to not worry about and just react when required? But that to do that level of nuanced decision making, you need kind of capacity in your mind, because that's quite sophisticated in its way. Is this something I can control? Is this something I can influence? When you are absolutely at your mental and emotional limit, you cannot do that level of nuanced thinking. All you can do, I would say, in my experience, others might have very different experiences, all you can do is that binary something, nothing, something, nothing. And your energy almost has to go into building your headspace, building yourself headspace, building yourself processing space, thinking space. Get as much into the do nothings for tomorrow so that you can focus on the do something now, because you have to do something. Right up to the point that there's nothing you can do, you have to do something. And even that decision, this is the end, is a decision. Better to be deliberate about the decisions you can control than be reactive. Whereas the stuff that's happening all around you, the things that might happen, the things your competitor might do, the way that the weather might turn out next year, the way that global or national level events are going to happen around you, you can't control that. You probably can't even influence it. All you can control is how you react. And for me, kind of riding that wave, being quite above it, riding it, getting no more involved than I have to in order to survive another day, and just kind of roll with it, is how I tend to deal with that, until it's clear to me there is a set of actions I can take that I have control over.
Yeah, no, that's good advice. If we build our confidence, we maybe become more able to deal with the fear of failure. what would your tips be for building confidence?
So ironically, the biggest thing to build your confidence is spectacular failure. I would say to be honest and human about this. When I started, the company that crashed and burned me and others. I was confident. I completely believed I could do this. I was going to build $100 million company and nobody was going to stop me. I had a plan. It was a good plan. It kind of went to plan. The people thought it was great, got all these shiny awards, got this, got investment. There was a lot of indicators we weren't hitting on, but I wasn't tuned in enough to them. And then as things went wrong, as they got worse and worse, I lost that confidence. I lost my belief that I could do it. But, that failure on every measure that I'd counted almost as meaningful made me realize I wasn't measuring the right thing. What success is to me as a person is a very different thing. It's about who I am, who I love, who loves me, how I live my life. I wouldn't have learned or come to understand any of that without having gone through the failure. And I come out of failure not really scared of anything very much at all. No, there's things I do not wish upon myself. I do not wish to suffer or be ill. I do not wish to see my loved ones suffer or be ill. Of course I don't. But am I afraid of what a board meeting might hold? Am I afraid of what's going to happen in 6 months' time? I'm genuinely not. If this doesn't work, I'm proud of what we achieved. It doesn't work. Yeah. We'll all be better for having done it. And I don't think I would feel like that without the failure. And I suppose then the question is, can you get there without having the failure? I think yes, I think you can. But I think that it's about growth as a human being, perhaps more than growth as a textbook, two-dimensional business person. I quote Viktor Frankl at every possible opportunity because he is perhaps the writer that I find most inspiring. He is a psychologist who was in concentration camps and came out. He was the only survivor in his family, came back and started to write about literally the meaning of life, man's search for meaning. And you could spend all day quoting him, but the core of kind of what he says is that if you have a why, you can almost endure anyhow. And he's also the person where something I really do believe very strongly comes from, which is that you can't control what people do to you, but you can control how you react to that and what you are prepared to let them make you feel. And so I think that some of this understanding your why and understanding really, really what success means. Because actually, I think that if you look at why you do something and what success means, 98% of the failure points you're feeling, they weren't on your success list anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know, I'm sure there are some, but I honestly don't know how many entrepreneurs out there as human beings going, the biggest measure of my life, again, deathbed stuff. When I'm on my deathbed, I just hope that my share cap is better than everybody else's. You know, I hope that I raised the highest valuation Series B of like any of my generation. I mean, really, probably are a few people that think that, but I ain't one of them. And so if that's not my measure of success, then why should that be the thing I'm most afraid of?
Yeah.
You know, and I think fear is a very good signal for decisions you need to make if you can be clear about it in your own mind. I used to joke, you know, my previous business, I used to have my every day I had 4 a.m. fear. I'd wake up with my 4 a.m. fear, and as time went on and things got harder, it became a 3 a.m. fear. A 2:45 a.m. fear, and actually that was a really important indicator that things weren't right, that there were signals, there were things coming through, but the overwhelming stress of that I didn't know how to manage. Whereas I think probably these days just less stuff stresses me because I'm reasonably confident that I can deal with a lot of it. And if stuff gets through, all the bad things, you know, the money, the people who do you harm, you know, all of that kind of thing. If that stuff gets through, then I can still control the outcome it has on me. And so again, I'm not so scared as I was.
Yeah. So quite interesting there that in many ways you're suggesting, I think, that if I'm picking you up right, that to overcome that fear of failure, to have that to build your confidence, actually you need to fail because you need to know that you can overcome that, so that perhaps the entrepreneur who never fails becomes overconfident, and something that happens and they disintegrate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I think that's very true. I mean, I don't know whether, I mean, real failure comes with a price, comes at a cost, as I've said. So I don't know how sensible it is to say that we should be, you know, run out and seek failure all over the place. I'm sure, you know, if you wish to go and find failure everywhere, you definitely can. Or maybe, you know, you can just get practice by whichever team you choose to support, or kind of maybe activities you can become more accustomed to failure that way, borrowed failure. But yeah, I mean, I think that catastrophic failure is a great teacher, but I think there are other ways to kind of build that resilience and build those experiences without kind of having to go seek it out. And I do think that's understanding your why, you know, understanding why you're doing it, what matters. And unless your fears are encroaching into that protected territory, then it's not really proper failure. It's inconvenience and annoyance and practice territory.
I at a personal level, I find playing poker quite useful for that confidence in failure bit, because you're always fear of failure in that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like a numbers person. This is why I say, you know, I get really nervous when plans have gone too well, because I understand and embrace probability. Yeah. So really, what's the chances of like eight things have just gone right in a row? What's the chance of the 9th thing going right? I mean, we're now starting to get into numbers that I'm not completely comfortable with. Now, the hopeless optimist in me, which is kind of what a founder probably has to be, or at least one of the founding team has to be, a delusional hopeless optimist. But it is delusion. Unless you can kind of convey it to others and turn it into a plan and execute the plan, it is definitely delusion while you have it on your own. But you know, that optimism, and this is why every time sort of the Euro Millions gets to a certain amount, I'm like, absolutely. Of course. Like, I had to buy a ticket because of course I'm going to win. I mean, how could I not? I mean, I deserve to. And so, I fall for this on a regular basis. But everything else is like, we put in a funding bid, we put in a tender, all of these kind of things. What is the chance of every one of these things working?
Yeah.
And sometimes, like, moderately important things go well, and you're like, oh no, I hope my moderately important things haven't gone well at the cost of the thing I really care about going well. Because what's the chances of all these things going well? So I kind of like, a lot of this, I have to try to de-risk myself by going chance, probability, we do our best, we know our why, we learn, we enjoy, and it will be what it will be, and not all of this can we control.
Okay. We had a question, and do you feel, Vicky, there are any challenges that particularly women in business face?
So my experience has been my women's specific challenges come into play when investment is involved.
Right.
And those challenges are the same whether the potential investor audience is male or female. As there's been a lot of research gone into this area about whether when women are raising money, they're asked questions about risk mitigation, and men tend to be asked questions about opportunity and how big it can be and kind of like uplifting. And for me, I definitely have found that whole investment process demoralizing, dispiriting, and it unfortunately doesn't seem to have gotten any easier. I did joke to my male co-founder a while back, can we just like invent a Dave who does this on my behalf? Like, you can be Dave, I can be Dave, whoever feels like being Dave can be Dave, but it's just going to be easier and quicker and we'll raise more money. And that makes me sad. That makes me sad, and you might go, oh, I'm being cynical and I've given up and I should be trying to change all this. I've been trying to change this for 20 years and I'm tired, right? I just want to smash things or invent a Dave. I just, not to say I'm going to stop trying, and just by talking about it, recognizing about it, laughing depressedly about it with other people helps. But for me, that's my main area. I have, as a tech founder, I do often get the kind of thing that like people don't think I made the tech or understand the tech. But again, that only tends to appear in investment related situations. If I'm in a room full of fellow geeks, we can communicate across all borders.
You've talked there about that kind of the coexistence of you as the person and you as the business person. So, and in anybody's life, our professional and our personal lives cross over all the time. Do you think there are skills that we can learn as people that can help us to overcome the fear of failure in business?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, my business persona is much more smart, clever, and organized than I am. She has it more together than me, and it's great. It's like sometimes I have to like think, what would the great Vicky Brock do? Should copy that. Unfortunately, that was when everything had gone wrong. I was like, felt like I was stalked everywhere I went by the more successful version of myself that I couldn't ever live up to because it was never real. This time I'm a bit more relaxed about it, but my personal version of me is a little bit more shambolic. But I did find myself with my elderly parents last week, kind of channeling my business persona, going, right, these are not decisions we need to be making at the same time. We need to do this, this, and this, and everything else just go into the green zone, and we'll deal with it if we have time. It's like, oh my God, my poor parents just got the CEO show up to organize their morning, which I'm sure is not their idea of fun. However, it was necessary.
Oh dear. I should explain to folks, Vicky, she was saying earlier, she's running 2 businesses. She spends her time, splits her time between the UK and where she is today, Estonia. So for someone who's sitting about 200 kilometres from the Russian border at the moment, what would you say to someone listening today that feels worried about the future?
I'm conscious this is a live webinar, and so I mustn't make references to certain things. I would say being 200 miles from the Russian border, no less than that, and I also have team members still in Kiev who have been in Ukraine throughout the war. It does focus the mind on what you need to worry about and what you don't need to worry about. And it does, yeah, it does help you prioritize. I certainly see much more fear about that situation when I come back to the UK than I do when I'm here. The approach, Estonia, where I live, I love this country very much, but that, this was brutally invaded by the Soviet Union. It's not fair to call it a former USSR country. This was forcibly invaded, and more than 20% of the population were killed, sent to the Gulag where they died. What Ukraine is going through, Estonia lived through, and that has shaped its culture. So it's been very, very brave. It's been this plucky little country going out there, getting NATO to take notice, getting the EU to take notice, single-handedly getting Finland and Sweden into NATO, giving a huge amount of its GDP to Ukraine, sending drones and all sorts of things. It's been very inspiring because it's so practical. And Estonia has been on the end of, it's an entirely digital country. All services, it's probably the most advanced digital country in the world. And it's been massively attacked for years by Russia. It doesn't get through. It's a centre of expertise for cybersecurity, which is one of the reasons we're here. But it's just taken us red, and there's just this idea: you take responsibility, you take personal responsibility for things you can control or influence. We'll take national responsibility for things we can control or influence, and everything else we react to, and we react to fast and pluckily. And I really admire that. But yes, don't worry about Russia.
Good to know. A question came in there, and you touched on this earlier, and it was, you did say that ideally, if you were starting a business, it was a team. It's not just you as the individual, it's a team. Because someone's asked, how much importance do you place on having co-founders at the beginning of a startup journey?
So I found my co-founding team before we had the business idea or a company idea.
Okay.
So I knew that I wanted to start a company with Stephen and Alan. I knew we'd make a great team. And then I actually went looking for the right idea. Okay. And so this time around, I had my team before I had the business. I suppose because I have so many ideas, I don't worry about ideas. I figure I can come up with a great idea any old time. I'd much rather have the right people and we work towards validating an idea than having a supposedly good idea and then having to persuade and cajole and influence people to join me in that. An idea is never as important as you think it is. It's how you can execute on the idea, and execution is all about the people. And what was great about having this little co-founding team ready to go and understanding our skills was that we were able to validate the idea with a live client on virtually no money, ourselves, just using our own skills. We agreed with them at the very beginning. What would you regard as an indicator that this is worth us and you spending some money on doing properly? They came out with a really little, much smaller than I would have spec'd out, idea of what success would look like. This is what we want you to do. And if you can do this, we think this could be a goer. And it's like, wow, that's so doable with the skills that we have. And we did that. That meant that we then got a contract, and it meant we could build the business. That's completely different to how I've done it before, where I've had to get the idea and then sell it to other people to join me as co-founders and then raise money. And you're now 18 months in and you still actually haven't done anything. I don't want to ever do that again. And I don't want to do it on my own again. It's horribly lonely. And it's hard to get out of your own head when the pressure and the light is on you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Excellent, thank you for that. And I'm hoping that that will have addressed another question we'd had earlier there, which how do you move from an idea to a reality? Because someone
this is one of my favorite questions.
Right, well, there you go. How so?
Somebody asked me this last week and they were very surprised by the polishedness of my answer, but this, right? Do something. Do the smallest possible thing that can validate that this deserves to live another week. When you've done the smallest possible thing that validates it deserves to live another week, what's the smallest possible thing that validates it deserves to live another month? Ideally validates it in the eyes of somebody else. So, and ideally the person that you want to buy this. If you understand what the smallest thing is that will solve your intended customer's pain, and then you work towards that, you have a business before you have built a product. You have turned an idea into a validated concept, and you don't need to worry about this whole nonsense about pitching an idea to raise money. You've just built a little thing or created a little thing that solves somebody's problem in the way that they said, if you can solve this problem like this, I'll give you some money. You go, oh, I have. Would you give me that money? And if they're like, well, I didn't actually mean it, they go, okay, well, what would it take you to give me some money? And when they go, well, I need it to be a little bit better than that. I need it to do this. And you're going to go, okay, right, seriously. Now, let's make an agreement and let's get it in writing. Why don't you give me the money to do that bit? Because I've already proven I've done one bit, and we'll take it from there. And no, it may not go like that. First business round, maybe 5 is the magic number before that conversation totally pans out like that. But definitely these tiny steps, these little steps, think about it as the absolute lazy approach to building a company. What's the least amount of work I can do to get the most amount of credit? In the eyes of the people that matter, which is not your fellow entrepreneurs or investors or Scottish Enterprise or Business Gateway, but the person who might actually give you money if this all goes to plan.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Another question we've had, which is, again, we're talking about that kind of co-founder bit. How do you find the right people?
I was shameless in, maybe other people gravitate towards Tinder. I been happily married for a very long time to one of my co-founders. Marry them is one handy way of finding a co-founder. Another way though is to kind of go out literally co-founder dating. going to various events. I think there are actually kind of Find Your Perfect Co-Founder websites still, though I cannot remember the name of one. It might even be called Co-Founder Dating. But I was very naughty in that I got a slot to pitch at EIE, is it, the big a big startup conference in Edinburgh, and I basically used my pitch slot at the last moment to pitch for a co-founder. And several people came over and were interested in that. Actually, I met Alan, who we did co-found a company with, still an equal partner in our business, at that event through my shameless pitch for a co-founder on the stage at EIE. I mean, you know, don't do that if you're planning to be invited back the following year.
And I guess that there are existing networks out there that can probably play a part in that. And I'm thinking obviously of folks like Entrepreneurial Scotland, who have a role of bringing people together. So there's another.
For sure. The one thing I would caution is that, you know, you really need to manage expectations from day one. We had an agreement, which is that nobody's sticking any money in, but nobody's taking anything either. On day one, we had a co-founder agreement, which is you're free to walk, but you don't get to take anything. What we will do is we will work together, like initially it was for 20 weeks. We'll work together for 20 weeks. Anything we create in that 20 weeks gets owned by whoever remains in the company, whoever remains active in the company. We basically had some, you know, death, divorce, and disinterest clauses, which are incredibly important. None of us thought that this was going to be a way to, you know, mess over any of the others. Nobody got to get anything they hadn't worked for. We were very grown up about making sure we had a co-founder agreement from day one on why that was important, and it's incredibly important. And we were all very experienced founders, so we all knew that we weren't doing this to get rich. We were playing a long-term game, and the success of that long-term game really depended on how well we got on together and whether the idea turned out to have any legs. And so we just gave ourselves walk-away points all the way through that. That would allow the company and the idea to continue, even if, as an individual, we walked away.
Okay. Sorry, folks, if you heard the door, that was the doorbell going in my house. We're almost out of time, Vicky. It's been absolutely fascinating listening to you there. Last, probably, and perhaps really important question to ask you, the best piece of advice you'd give to someone who's experienced or may experience failure in the future.
Yeah, I think my best advice is, and I hear this in Tom Hanks's voice, and I cannot remember, I'm guessing he said this in the film, but he certainly said this on the film program that I used to listen to on the radio, which is this will pass, too will pass. Okay? This may be the most miserable period of your life, this will pass. This may be the most incredible, crazy high. I mean, being an entrepreneur when it's going right is as crazy as when it's going wrong. I mean, the extremes of emotion and the extreme of adrenaline can make it really hard to just have a boring old day where things go normally well. You know, it can be that you feel you're failing when you're just having a kind of a normal, uneventful day, when you get so used to the ups and downs. This will pass. You know, this is all very, very temporary, and you know, yeah, live your best life. Cliche, but true.
Okay. Vicky, thank you so much for that. As I say, we're just about out of time. Apologies to folks if we didn't get your question, but we will get back to you on the things you've been asking us there. It has been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. You have been so candid, so helpful in that. As I say, I definitely have been able to speak with an industry expert there, an industry practitioner who has experienced exactly what we've been trying to talk about today. I really, really appreciate it. So thank you, Vicky. And I wish you every success with all your adventures that you're involved in.
Thank you. Well, I'm just glad I didn't swear and I didn't trigger a war with Russia. So like wins on 2 counts, right?
You did incredibly well. So thank you very much for that. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll catch you again on another occasion. Thank you.